Welcome to Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up, where we break down the world's most urgent intelligence and national security stories. With over 25 years of experience in intelligence and law enforcement, Neil Bisson, the director of the Global Intelligence Knowledge Network and a retired intelligence officer with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, delivers expert analysis beyond the headlines. This week, political interference rattles Israel's intelligence community as Mossad's director accuses Prime Minister Netanyahu of ordering potentially illegal operations. In Australia, a former Axios source breaks his silence, revealing that a Sydney-based imam has been acting as the spiritual leader of a pro-Islamic state network. In the UK, a Parcel bomb narrowly misses its Russian intelligence agent target, raising serious questions about retaliation and spy-on-spy conflict on British soil. And in India, a brutal attack on tourists in Kashmir is claimed by the Resistance Front, an offshoot of Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba, putting the spotlight on evolving militant strategies in the region. Also on the radar this week, a China-linked espionage campaign sweeping across Southeast Asia, another signal messaging breach by a high-ranking U.S. official, and the first terrorism charges laid against a member of Venezuela's Tren de Aragua. Plus, foreign interference in Canada resurfaces, this time targeting a conservative candidate in Toronto. All that and more. Let's get started.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up. I'm your host, Neil Bisson, a retired intelligence officer with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service and the director of the Global Intelligence Knowledge Network. The world of intrigue that is international intelligence kept spinning this week, from terrorist attacks in India to another signal leak by a U.S. national security official. I'll cover all the major headlines and provide you with insights and intelligence that only government officials with top secret clearances get access to. So let's dive in. This week's first story comes out of Israel. According to Al Jazeera, the head of Mossad has accused Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of pressuring the agency to carry out operations that may have violated both Israeli law and internal intelligence protocols. This revelation raises serious questions about political interference and intelligence work, and what happens when those lines begin to blur. At the center of this unfolding drama is Mossad Director David Barnea. According to reports, Barnea informed a key Israeli government oversight body, the Attorney General's Office, that Netanyahu had made repeated requests for irregular operations that could be considered illegal. These weren't minor intelligence oversteps. They allegedly involved missions that violated domestic laws and bypassed standard approval procedures. From the lens of transparency and trust in a country's intelligence apparatus, this is deeply troubling. Agencies like Mossad operate under strict legal and operational boundaries, often refined over decades and made to reflect the values of the populace. When a political leader attempts to bypass those guardrails, it can endanger the entire system, both domestically and internationally. It also creates a dangerous precedent for future operations that can result in assassinations. If heads of government can override operational controls for political or personal gain, it places intelligence professionals in an impossible position. Carry out potentially unlawful missions or risk their careers and possibly prosecution by refusing. This story isn't happening in a vacuum. In recent years, we've seen democratic institutions in several countries tested by political interference, sometimes involving intelligence services. In the US, we've seen accusations of pressure on the FBI and the CIA. In authoritarian regimes like Russia and China, intelligence services are often instruments of the political will of their leaders. What makes Israel's case different is the country's robust, if at times contentious, system of judicial and institutional checks and balances. For Mossad's chief to push back publicly and report his own prime minister is extremely rare and suggests that Barnea saw the situation as a red line. The article quotes several unnamed senior officials who corroborate the report, suggesting there's a strong institutional concern about Netanyahu's actions. When political leaders start dictating operational outcomes, especially those that could breach domestic law, it's not just a legal issue. It can erode trust among international allies, compromise long-standing intelligence sharing agreements, and fracture internal morale. Additionally, it can erode the confidence of the very people the organizations have been mandated to protect. If Mossad officers believe their actions are no longer grounded in laws and ethics, it can lead to operational hesitancy, or worse, resignations, leaks, or intelligence failures. With Mossad's director having accused Prime Minister Netanyahu of requesting potentially illegal intelligence operations, a major red flag has been risen regarding the health of democratic oversight in Israel. This story will likely have ripple effects in Israel and abroad. We may see increased scrutiny on intelligence oversight, not just in Israel, but other democracies where similar tensions exist. Looking ahead, this issue could lead to resignations, formal investigations, and even a shift in how Mossad is governed. This could be the beginning of a turning point in how intelligence services resist political pressure. For our next story, we're examining a compelling revelation from Australia. A former ASIO operative, known by the pseudonym Marcus, has come forward to expose the activities of Sydney preacher Wissam Haddad, identifying him as a spiritual leader of a pro-Islamic network in Australia. This disclosure sheds light on the covert operations of extremist networks and the challenges faced by intelligence agencies in countering them. Marcus, an imam and teacher recruited by ASIO, infiltrated Haddad's network from 2016 to 2023. His intelligence gathering revealed that Haddad's organization, including the Al Medina Dawah Center and the Dawah Van, were instrumental in indoctrinating young Australians with extremist ideologies. Haddad, also known as Abu Usaid, maintained connections with notorious figures like Anjem Choudhury, a UK-based extremist jailed for leading a global jihadist recruitment network. Through encrypted communications, Choudhury mentored Haddad, advising on expanding the Australian pro-Islamic State network. Despite these associations, Haddad has not been charged with terrorism-related offenses. His adeptness at navigating legal boundaries poses significant challenges for law enforcement and highlights the complexities of counterterrorism efforts. Haddad's influence extends beyond his immediate network. His ties to individuals like Khalif Sharoof and Mohammed El-Omar, both killed fighting in the Islamic State, and connections with the Appleby Group, a Sydney-based terrorist cell, underscore his long-standing involvement in extremist circles. The resurgence of pro-Islamic sentiments in Australia, facilitated by figures like Haddad, emphasizes the persistent threat of domestic radicalization. The utilizations of community centers and outreach programs as fronts for extremist indoctrination necessitates vigilant monitoring and proactive interventions by intelligence agencies. Former New South Wales Police counterterrorism detective David Gowell noted that Haddad's strategic avoidance of direct incitement, stating he supports the use of violence to forward his belief, although he doesn't engage in violence, nor does he directly incite it. I worked counterterrorism for the majority of my career, and to me, this case illustrates how extremist leaders exploit legal loopholes in community platforms to propagate their ideologies. It underscores the importance of human sources or assets, like Marcus, and unveiling covert operations and preventing potential attacks. The exposure of Wissam Haddad's role in fostering a pro-Islamic State network in Australia highlights the ongoing challenges in combating domestic extremism. It calls attention to the need for robust intelligence operations, legal reforms to address indirect incitement, and community engagement to counter radical narratives. As we continue to monitor such developments, it's imperative that we remain informed and vigilant. The dedication of individuals like Marcus serves as a testament to the critical role of intelligence work in safeguarding national security. We travel to the UK for our next story, where we're looking at an eye-catching headline: Russian chief targeted in Parcel bomb attack in Birmingham. The story reports an attempted bomb parcel attack targeting a senior Russian intelligence official, an event with significant implications not only for diplomatic security, but for the broader threat landscape across Europe. According to the Daily Mail article, the intended victim was Lieutenant General Andrei Averyanov, a high-ranking officer in the GRU, Russia's military intelligence service. Averyanov is best known for heading Unit 29155, an elite covert operations team believed to be responsible for a series of assassinations and sabotage missions across Europe, including the 2018 poisoning of Sergei Skripal in Salisbury. The parcel bomb, which was intercepted before reaching its target, suggests an alarming development: the re-emergence of targeted attacks on Russian intelligence personnel outside of conflict zones. The fact that this occurred in Birmingham, a multicultural city in the UK, raises the stakes in terms of both counterintelligence efforts and public safety. From an intelligence standpoint, this could signal the rise of proxy retaliation attacks, possibly by dissident groups, rival intelligence agencies, most likely Ukraine, or even organized criminal networks and geopolitical interests. It also adds to the complexity of providing diplomatic security in Western democracies where the freedom of movement and expression makes securing foreign targets particularly challenging. Unit 29155's activities have drawn international condemnation in recent years. This unit has been linked to operations in Bulgaria, Moldova, and Germany, often involving poisonings, bombings, or cyber warfare. Averyanov's alleged presence in the UK, possibly under diplomatic cover, might have been a part of an operational visit or intelligence liaison assignment. Either way, it's highly unusual for such a senior operative to surface publicly. What's particularly telling is that the Parcel bomb incident comes amid escalating tensions between Russia and Western powers. Following the invasion of Ukraine, Russian intelligence operatives have been expelled en masse from NATO countries, yet their presence, official and unofficial, continues to pose concerns. While the article doesn't cite direct expert commentary, the circumstances of the case echo previous MI5 and MI6 warnings about hostile state activity, especially from Russia. From the perspective of retired intelligence officers, attacks like this, whether successful or not, serve as both symbolic and tactical messages. The Parcel bomb might not have targeted Averyanov physically, but also aimed to send a broader message to the Kremlin. Your agents are vulnerable even in the West. It also speaks to potential escalation in spy versus spy tactics. Whether this was a state-sponsored reprisal or an act of a lone actor with inside knowledge, it represents a major concern for host nation security services. This incident underscores the ongoing tit-for-tat tensions playing out in the shadows of international diplomacy and clandestine warfare in Europe. As the war in Ukraine continues, Russia will likely continue this type of activity against any nation seen as being supportive of Ukraine. Looking ahead, we may see an increase in retaliatory strikes, both physical and digital, involving Russian and Western intelligence operatives. It's a reminder that the intelligence battles we often assume are far away are in fact playing out in places many of us call home. We head to India for our next story, which focuses on a recent and tragic event in Indian-administered Kashmir. On April 22nd, a deadly attack in the Bisson meadow near Pahalgam resulted in the deaths of 26 tourists and injuries to several others. The Resistance Front, or the TRF, a relatively obscure militant group, claimed responsibility for this horrific act. The attack targeted tourists enjoying the scenic beauty of Bisson, often referred to as the mini Switzerland of India. Armed assailants emerged from nearby forests and opened fire with automatic weapons, leading to significant casualties. This incident marks one of the deadliest attacks on civilians in the region in recent years. The TRF, which claimed responsibility via telegram, stated their opposition to the granting of residency permits to outsiders in Kashmir. They warned that violence would be directed toward those attempting to settle illegally. Although the victims were tourists and not new residents, the attack underscores TRF's intent to resist perceived demographic changes in the region. The TRF emerged in 2019, shortly after the Indian government revoked Kashmir's partial autonomy and imposed a clampdown. The group's name, lacking traditional Islamic references, appears designed to project a neutral character focused on Kashmiri nationalism. Indian intelligence agencies believe the TRF is a front for the Pakistani-based Lashkar-e-Taiba, or the LET, aiming to mask its operations under a different banner. The revocation of Kashmir's special status allowed non-locals to obtain domicile certificates, granting them land ownership rights and access to government jobs. This policy shift has been a point of contention, and groups like the TRF view it as an attempt to alter the region's demographic makeup. Security officials have referred to the TRF as the virtual front, highlighting its origins in online propaganda and messaging. A police officer with experience in cases involving armed groups noted that the TRF's branding aims to present a nationalist front, distancing itself from overtly religious connotations. Indian officials maintain that the TRF is essentially an offshoot of the LET, serving as a facade to continue militant activities under a different guise. Pakistan, while condemning the attack, denies any involvement and asserts that it provides only diplomatic and moral support to the Kashmiri people. The Pahalgam attack signifies a troubling escalation in the tactics of militant groups in Kashmir. Targeting tourists not only results in tragic loss of life, but also aims to destabilize the region's economy and deter external engagement. The emergence of groups like the TRF reflects an evolution in militant strategies, utilizing both physical violence and digital propaganda to further their objectives. As the situation unfolds, it is imperative to monitor the responses from both Indian and Pakistani authorities, as well as international community stance on this renewed violence in a historically volatile region. Staying with news out of Southeast Asia, for our next story, we're looking at a new espionage campaign targeting government agencies and critical infrastructure across the region. The story entitled "Researchers Report Espionage Campaign Targeting Government and Critical Sectors in Southeast Asia" reveals yet another example of persistent state-aligned cyber activity with far-reaching geopolitical implications. Security researchers from Palo Alto Networks, Unit 42, have identified a sophisticated cyber espionage campaign they've dubbed Operation Diplomatic Spectre. The group behind the operation is believed to be aligned with the nation-state, possibly China, based on the tools, techniques, and infrastructure used. The campaign specifically targeted foreign affairs ministers, military organizations, telecommunications, and energy sectors in several unnamed Southeast Asian countries. Threat actors used spear phishing emails to deliver a custom malware called PhantomNet, which allowed full access to compromised systems, exfiltration of sensitive documents, and long-term persistence. From an intelligence perspective, this campaign fits the mold of traditional espionage: collect foreign policy insights, gain leverage in bilateral or regional negotiations, and secure economic and strategic intelligence. It's a classic human methodology, but retooled for the cyberspace. The choice of targets suggests long-term strategic goals rather than short-term disruption. Hallmarks of espionage operations designed to build influence and inform nation decision-making rather than just cause overt harm. Southeast Asia has long been a hotbed for great power competition, particularly between China and the United States. Nations in the region are balancing trade relationships with Beijing while leaning on Washington for security guarantees. Cyber espionage campaigns like this aren't new. China-linked groups such as APT-40 and Mustang Panda have been active in regions for years, often overlapping in their tactics and targets. What's notable here is the use of bespoke malware and a more refined operational tempo, suggesting either a new actor or an evolution of cyber techniques. This operation also appears to coincide with ongoing regional tensions over South China Sea, making it highly likely that some of the intelligence sought was related to territorial claims, military deployments, or foreign policy alignments. While Palo Alto's report avoids attributing the campaign directly to any one government, it highlights strong parallels with Chinese state-backed groups in terms of infrastructure overlap and targeting profile. From my own experience, it's clear these campaigns are not only designed to gather raw intelligence, but also to test defenses, response times, and digital resilience of targeted governments. And in the world of cyber warfare, that reconnaissance is often just as valuable as the data itself. Although the story focuses on targets in Southeast Asia, it would be naive to think that the same tactics and techniques are not being used against diplomats and government officials in Western nations. It's also worth pointing out the resilience of these operations. Despite international pressure and public attribution, the campaign persisted, likely because the strategic payoff outweighed the reputational risk for the perpetrators. Foreign state actor and non-state actors working for enemy states like China, Russia, and Iran are not dissuaded by public attention to their attempts to leverage cyberspace espionage attempts against Western nations or other targets. The continued use of plausible deniability by these states is evidence that these tactics work. So what does this mean? Southeast Asia remains a digital battleground for strategic espionage and cyber operations like Operation Diplomatic Spectre, which are growing more complex, more targeted, and more persistent. Governments in the region and beyond will need to invest in cyber defense, not just as a tech issue, but as a core pillar of national security. This is a clear reminder. In today's world, critical infrastructure isn't just made of concrete and steel. It's built on code, networks, and data. Looking ahead, diplomats of Western nations will need to be constantly reminded that they are targets of spear phishing attempts by enemy states and their proxies. Additionally, diplomats will need to be transparent about any potential phishing attempts, despite the negative attention it may bring if they are victims of this form of cyber espionage. We head to the United States for our next story and turn our attention to a significant breach within the U.S. Department of Defense. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is under intense scrutiny for allegedly sharing sensitive military intelligence through unsecure signal group chats. Again, this revelation has raised serious concerns about national security and the potential for foreign espionage. According to the article, Secretary Hegseth reportedly disclosed classified details regarding U.S. military operations, including active strikes in Yemen via signal group chats that included family members. Such actions have alarmed national security experts who warn that these leaks could make Hegseth and his associates prime targets for espionage by adversaries like Russia, China, or Iran. The breach not only endangers lives and compromises military operations, but also diminishes U.S. credibility among allies. This incident underscores the critical importance of operational security, or OPSEC, and the risk associated with informal communications channels. The potential for adversaries to exploit such vulnerabilities poses a significant threat to national security. This is not the first time that concerns have been raised about handling classified information within the U.S. government. However, the involvement of high-ranking officials, like the Secretary of Defense, amplifies the severity of the situation. This incident also comes at a time when global tensions are escalating, making the need for stringent information security protocols more critical than ever. The use of encrypted messaging apps like Signal is common among officials for secure communication. However, the inclusion of unauthorized individuals in such chats and the sharing of sensitive information without proper clearance violates established security protocols and increases the risk of leaks. Experts cited in the article expressed grave concerns about the implications of Hegseth's action. They highlight the potential for adversaries to intercept communications or gain access through compromised devices belonging to chat participants. Such breaches could lead to the exposure of critical intelligence and endanger military personnel. From my professional experience, maintaining strict adherence to communication protocols is paramount in safeguarding national security. Any deviation, especially by individuals in positions of authority, can have far-reaching consequences. It opens up their contacts to being targets of interception by foreign hostile states and non-state actors, as the potential to capture actionable intelligence increases with the number of missteps taken by the individual in authority. Additionally, with a high-level government official, there is likely less scrutiny placed on their actions by underlings who fear repercussions if they bring these faux pas to light. In summary, the allegations against Secretary Hegseth represents a significant breach of national security protocols. The incident serves as a reminder of the importance of operational security and potential risks associated with informal communication channels. As the investigation continues, it is imperative for government agencies to reinforce strict adherence to information security protocols to prevent similar incidents in the future. Sticking with intelligence news out of the United States, our next story focuses on the U.S.'s approach to transnational criminal organizations. The Department of Justice has unsealed its first ever terrorism case against an alleged high-ranking member of the Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua. This move marks a pivotal shift in how the U.S. classifies and prosecutes such organizations. The individual at the center of this case is Jose Enrique Martinez Flores, also known as Chique. He is described in charging documents as a high-ranking TDA leader based in Bogota, Colombia. Flores is alleged to have facilitated the delivery of approximately 5 kilograms of cocaine for international distribution, activities that prosecutors claim were intended to further TDA's criminal objectives. Flores faced multiple charges, including conspiring to provide material support to a designated foreign terrorist organization, providing such support, and involvement in international drug distribution conspiracies. If convicted, he could face a maximum penalty of life in prison and a $10 million fine. This case is particularly noteworthy as it represents the first application of terrorist charges against a member of Tren de Aragua since the gang was designated as a terrorist organization by the Trump administration. The use of terrorist statutes, traditionally reserved for groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, underscores the severity with which the U.S. government views TDA's activities. Tren de Aragua, originally from Venezuela, has evolved from a local street gang into a transnational criminal organization with a presence in multiple countries. Its activities span drug trafficking, human smuggling, and violent crime. The designation of TDA as a terrorist organization reflects the broader strategy to combat such groups using the full spectrum of legal tools available. The decision to charge Flores under terrorism charges indicates a shift in policy recognizing the threat posed by organized criminal groups that operate with the sophistication and reach of a traditional terrorist organization. This approach allows for more robust legal mechanisms to disrupt and dismantle these networks. Attorney General Pamela Bondi emphasized the structure and dangerous nature of TDA, stating, "TDA is not a street gang, it's a highly structured terrorism organization that put down roots in our country during the prior administration." FBI Director Kash Patel echoed the sentiment, highlighting the threat that TDA poses to national security and communities across the United States. This development signifies how the current U.S. administration is attempting to blur the lines between organized crime and terrorism. From my perspective, traditional terrorist groups focus on religious or political ideology. Criminal organizations are not trying to intentionally undermine either the political system or any religious beliefs within a country. However, the convergence of criminal threats with terrorist actions seems to have necessitated the U.S. government to provide a more comprehensive approach that leverages counterterrorism strategies to address these challenges posed by such organizations. The unsealing of terrorism charges against the Tren de Aragua leader marks a significant escalation in the U.S. government's efforts to combat transnational criminal organizations. By applying terrorism statutes, authorities signal a commitment to addressing the complex and evolving nature of these threats. As these groups continue to expand their operations, it's imperative for intelligence and law enforcement agencies to adapt their strategies accordingly. For our last story this week, we turn our attention to a concerning story from Canada's Election Interference Task Force. Conservative candidate Joe Tay, running in the Toronto riding of Don Valley North, has been identified as the target of a transnational repression operation. This campaign, primarily conducted on Chinese-language social media platforms, aims to discredit Tay, raising serious concerns about foreign interference in Canada's democratic processes. The task force findings indicate that the disinformation campaign against Joe Tay is not an isolated incident, but part of a broader strategy to influence Canada's political landscape. The operation involves coordinated efforts to spread false narratives and undermine Tay's credibility, particularly focusing on his critical stance regarding Hong Kong's laws. From an intelligence perspective, such operations are indicative of sophisticated influence campaigns designed to manipulate public opinion and interfere with democratic institutions. These tactics are often employed by state actors to suppress dissent and promote their geopolitical interests abroad. This incident is part of a growing pattern of foreign interference in Canadian politics. In recent years, there have been multiple reports of similar campaigns targeting politicians who are outspoken about human rights issues in China. Notably, Conservative MP Michael Chong's family was repeatedly targeted for harassment by the Chinese government following his condemnation of China's treatment of its Uyghur minority. These operations are consistent with China's broader strategy of transnational repression, aiming to silence critics and exert influence over foreign political systems. The use of social media platforms to disseminate disinformation allows for a rapid, widespread reach, making it a potent tool for such campaigns. Security experts warn that these interference operations pose a significant threat to the integrity of democratic processes. They emphasize the need for robust countermeasures, including increased transparency, public awareness campaigns, and enhanced cybersecurity protocols. Drawing from my experience in intelligence, it's clear that combating such threats requires a multifaceted approach. This includes not only technical solutions, but also diplomatic efforts to hold accountable those responsible for orchestrating these campaigns. The targeting of Joe Tay underscores the persistent threat of foreign interference in democratic elections. As Canada approaches its next federal elections, it's imperative for authorities to remain vigilant and proactive in safeguarding the electoral process. Public awareness and resilience are key components in countering disinformation and ensuring the integrity of our democratic institutions. On the same topic, earlier this week, I had the opportunity to sit on a virtual panel with other esteemed guests to discuss foreign interference with the B'nai B'rith Special Advisory Council to the League for Human Rights. I'll leave a link in the transcripts for those who are interested. Well, that's another week of highlights and open source information on all things national security and intelligence collection. I'd like to take a quick moment to remind the audience that on Monday, Canadians go to the polls to decide our next government and who will lead it. Regardless of who you vote for or how you vote, please remember that your vote does count. The Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up is filled with information concerning how authoritarian regimes suppress the freedom of their people through coercion, extortion, and violence. Canadians are fortunate to live in a country where we have a say in who runs the country, and they are responsible to ensure Canada remains a free and prosperous sovereign nation. Do your part and participate in one of the greatest freedoms any country could ask for, the freedom of choice to vote. Until next week, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.
That's a wrap for this week's Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up. From Mossad standoff with political leadership in Israel, to cyber espionage campaigns in Southeast Asia, to a deadly terror strike in Kashmir, each story underscores the evolving threats shaping our global intelligence landscape. Delivering this level of insight each week takes time, expertise, and a deep commitment to keeping you informed on the issues that don't always make front-page news, but matter just as much. If you found this episode valuable, please consider liking, sharing, or leaving a review. It's one of the best ways to support the show and help others discover it. And if you'd like to go a step further, you can support the podcast through Patreon or Buzzsprout. Whether it's a one-time contribution or ongoing support, it helps keep this mission going strong. You'll find the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening. And as Neil always says, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe. See you next week.